Hey, hello everyone. Whoa, my God, my levels are high. Hey, welcome to the best produced show on the internet. This is the ComicBase Livestream. I'm your host, Pete Bickford, and back from a week off. I'll tell you about that one in just a bit. Anyway, thank you to everyone who's come to join us here for the next hour. Well, actually, this is gonna be a short show probably because there's a lot going on today, both my life and I'm sure a bunch of yours. So it normally would be the next hour or so. We'd be talking about all things comic and comic-based related. It'll probably be a bit on the short side, so just a little heads up on that one. By the way, before I get too far into things, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, especially in these early minutes of the show. It always helps everything. If you haven't set up for it already, please go ahead and click the notification bell so you get notified when we do things, because we do things planned in the future that are actually like in progress for once, that will be dropping onto the channel as things go on. Anyway, so want to say hi to the folks who are here. First of all, Richard Scott first in the door here with a Zero Wing reference. Oro Viejo, Happy Heart Day. Yes, and so many these like pumpkin spice fall. I don't even understand the color scheme, but anyway, Happy Heart Day of those ones. Minneapolis getting some more snow, but yes, rain changing to snow, 40 degrees. Ugh. Looks like all sorts of nor'easters and sou'westers and all sorts of other weather happening along the country. Thank goodness today out here in Franklin it is a beautiful 65-degree day, and I couldn't be happier. Mike Beam from Vancouver, Washington, Jet City Comics join us here. Rob Weinberg from Toledo, of course, our moderators in the house, and a lot of discussion about weather systems for everyone. Andre, welcome. Let's see what else going on. Looks like Brian Price joining us from Denton, Texas. Ed Brito as well. Ed Billiot in the house. Sandu Comics. Pete Krychet. Right. Well, man, welcome everyone. And Horace is trying to get into Broken Code by Jeff Horowitz. Reads like an endless newspaper article. Now I'm kind of intrigued suddenly. Anyway, so yeah, let's get into some things. So I wasn't here, last time out. I was having. Let me bring up an illustration of what basically I was doing last week. Let's see if I can get the proper program up. There we are. And let's throw this into the media bay. And yeah, it looks something like that, just slightly less dramatic. That's what I was doing for fun. But yes, always fun when I was going in for a procedure, as they say, a number of years ago, 3-4 years, about 3 years ago actually. I was up by a fire pit and something popped out, bit me in the eye. I thought it was a bug or maybe some weird splinter or something, and it hit me right. I'm sorry, right here. It swelled up terribly at the time, but then it went back down, and I thought, well, okay, it's like a bug bite, it'll go away. And years later, it had never gone away, and so talked to a couple dermatologists. First one's like, dude, that's right next to your eye. We're not going to poke around with that. And then I found somebody else is like, hey, eye. Well, clearly you'll want to go to our special, division. So anyway, that's what I was doing a couple weeks ago, and let's just say it involved scalpels and needles and being told, yeah, just keep your eye open, which is really not easy to do when stuff is coming right at you like that, and right as they're about to hit, they go like, oh yeah, by the way, just a little burning here. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty good graphic, all things considered. But the real problem at the end of it all was that they just sent me home, no cool pirate eye patch, nothing like that. And they're like, yeah, okay, we'll see it. By the way, here's a list of things that, here's some gunk to put on it, and a list of things that may happen to you in the weeks to come. And they included the most goth thing ever, which is bloody tears, which I never had that as a side effect, unfortunately. But man, my cure-loving self would have been so into that back in high school. But anyway, but yeah, so it's much better now. I looked, last week at this time, I looked like I'd just gone 12 rounds with Rocky Balboa, and so it's much better now. So anyway, thank you for everyone for all the well wishes, and hopefully the mark I've got now fades away entirely, and then we'll just be golden. So let's see here. TV Broken Code is about the purposefully alleged addictiveness of Facebook et al. Interesting. Okay, now I'm truly interested in that. Yeah, Facebook is and for all I know, the show goes into all that stuff. But they were some of the earliest folks I know on the internet that were doing not just when you're testing systems. I'm going to square my camera over just a little bit over here. When you're testing websites and things like that, it's common to do what's called A/B testing or split testing if you are going A, B, C, D, E, F, G, where you feed different versions of the site to different users based on some kind of criteria up to maybe you're just testing whether I can get more clicks on my ad if I word it this way or the other way. I mean, if I call it buy now versus call the button add to cart, which one causes more people to click, and so you can basically just seamlessly feed different versions of the site to users based on some criteria you choose, and see what happens. Facebook was the first place I'd ever known of where they used that to conduct psychological experiments on their users, needless to say, without consent. But what they were doing in the at least the earliest incarnations is they're trying to figure out that if they sent you more content that pisses you off, if it would get you to click more. And I think we know the answer. But yeah, they were basically trying to program them, to get reactions to emotion in delivering different versions of a site to people to get, to ramp up, to figure out what causes people to, I guess the polite term is engage, but the real term is kind of like rage comment, unfriend, write, nasty letters to whatever the thing is. And yeah, unfortunately, it turns out that the one of the simplest algorithms you could ever have in social media to get people to engage with it is, yeah, feed them stuff that they hate. It isn't, so it isn't just puppies and kitties and school plays and things like that, which is what Facebook really used to be all about for most of us. But it turns out that if you have politics on one side, if they feed you political comments from the other side, it would get a lot of engagement as you explain to the guy in great detail what an idiot he is, et cetera, et cetera. And the worst part, you guys have probably found out on all these systems, is if you ever somehow encounter something that you feel like, oh man, I must comment and square that guy away, you will never stop seeing data that's exactly like it, because they figured, oh well, this is the sort of thing that gets people to engage. So anyway, this, by the way, is the same algorithm. This is like why all of YouTubers are all saying, like, make sure you like and subscribe. And by the way, if you also comment, even if you just say things like, Bickford, you have the stupidest show on the internet, that actually will drive this show into your feed on YouTube more often. So please I feel, do whatever it comes naturally in terms of that. But yeah, no, actually, I think I will check out Broken Code at some point, or at least investigate further of what it's about. All right. So anyway, other things that don't involve eyeballs and pre-code horror. So a couple announcements. I'm going to do these. We normally do them in program order, but I'm going to go, and this time I'm going to talk first about content, for reasons which I'll get to. First of all, thank you to everybody who submits content to us. As you guys all know, we have a content management staff, of editors who review prices, who review submissions to the database and stuff like that. Who also, when they're not doing that, are busy on days like today indexing all the comic books that we've ordered. Because we order like a mid-sized comic store, scanning and indexing everything that forms the week's update. But anyway, that's I have a couple people on staff where that's all they do. But anyway, you've been keeping them very busy, and I want to say thank you to everyone who's been doing that. A couple little milestone-ish notes. We are 4,000 and change comics away from hitting 1.25 million comics in the database. The million comic mark still blows my mind. I can't believe that there ever were that many comic books published. But the fact that we're, we sailed past that, I think, 18 months ago or so, and that we are now approaching the 1.25 million comic mark is like, at this point, I'm just numb. But anyway, we also, of course, hit over 1 million comic covers or covers in the database. They're not all comics. We're now over 1,030,000 covers. Unfortunately, it's not a Brian Stewart says, give me a sec, I'll add another 4,000 books. I'll bet you will. But anyway, yeah, there's no cool number that way to say 1,030,000. So I guess we'll wait till that's 1.1 million in another 70,000 comics. But the main thing I want to say from our end is, addition to pushing all the updates and things like that, like you see us do, and we do push an update every week, is we're going to start prioritizing omnibuses in our cataloging efforts. We are submitting. First of all, we don't order everything, and one of the things we don't order are things that cost $100 a clip. We get the week's comics in, but if it's going to cost me $100 to get a single issue of a thing, that's not, is even as horrific as our comic bill is over here. Even we can't support that. So when we do omnibuses, we typically are doing them from solicitations, and up until recently, we've been treating these omnibuses like any other trade paperback novel, which is to say, we do new comics first. Sometimes we wait on the number one issue to appear until we actually see the comic in hand, due to the way that series often change names ahead of time. And sometimes it's good to actually see exactly what they're going to call the book for real, as opposed to how they solicited it, to keep down the number of renamings that we have to do in the database. But we try to get most content into the database a couple of months before it actually appears. On the street. One big exception of that in the past has been trade paperbacks, where it's collections of material that's already there. It's kind of really tedious and hard to index when from solicitations. There's a lot of hand material involved with the whole thing. So our guys can't go particularly fast at it. And so as a result, that stuff tends to get pushed to the back of the work priority queue. But one thing that we did have a real consensus with in our staff meeting that we hold every Tuesday is that we need to push the omnibuses right to the front, right up there with the number one issues, because it's definitely a trend that we're seeing more and more of you guys are often rebuying collections, that you've had before, that you don't want to get out your X-Men 94 just to reread the story, and so you'll pick up the omnibus. They're really tedious to index, and so that's something that we want to do as much of the work as possible, rather than have some poor user submitted stuff go on there. But the other thing is, because they were $100 each, we often wouldn't pick up a copy for ourselves on those things unless it was something that I just particularly like say Daredevil or Captain America or the aforementioned X-Men. So we haven't been giving them as much love as we needed to, and those are getting much more love in the future. So anyway, to all the people who have indexed omnibuses and sent them in, let us know. But we are also definitely seeing a real switch in the publishing strategy, particularly of Marvel, in that so much of the material that's coming out from them that's selling is actually reprints of material they've already done, particularly the facsimile editions and the omnibuses. One of our guys was saying, yeah, he walked to his local comic store, and what used to be like the new comic wall, is just nothing but they deeply stocked all the facsimile editions. So, he was saying, well, isn't that crazy? I said, well, think about it. I mean, given a choice as a consumer between paying $3.99 to get the latest issue of like the 10th series of Punisher after he's been killed and revived and replaced with a different guy and whatever else, paying $3.99 to get the latest issue of that, or paying $3.99 to buy a copy of Amazing Spider-Man number 129, the first appearance of the Punisher, where would you spend your money? And so I think it's pretty obvious that a lot of people are saying, yeah, rebuying exact reprints of some of the great comic material that's come out through Marvel's very storied history is clearly a winner from a sales perspective, and I'm definitely seeing the stores ordering accordingly. So that's something that also we give a lot of priority to when we're indexing. We really do try to get that stuff into the database well ahead of when it hits the streets, but at the very least we want to get there the second it hits the streets if for some reason we couldn't adequately index it ahead of time. So anyway, that is coming, and so just want to let you know. Oro says, at least make sure I haven't missed anyone. By the way, hello Steve Herring in the chat. Oro says, how about a graph that shows when variants will likely surpass regular issues in ComicBase? Oh, that's a horrifying thought. I don't think we're anywhere near there. But I'll bet you for so it is I think the last time I looked, I think variants comprised 87% of the comic issues that are released in a given month. I used to know that down to the decimal. I'm gonna have to look at what it is from January's numbers now that January's complete, but it's a horrifying number. And we went over the data in a previous show where it just showed how that's changed over the years in a deep dive. I think I even linked the spreadsheets in that one. If I didn't, let me know, and I can dig those up. But there's so very many comics in the database that that's not going to be the normal case if you consider all of comic history. For instance, Brian Bryce is talking about, I'll add another 4,000 issues of an Argentinian, reprints of the X-Men or whatever the heck he's indexing at the moment. Those things typically just come out as, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, not 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D. It's not like modern comics on that score. That being said, boy, I think that might be interesting if we were to pull off just US comics published after, say, 1970. Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to know what that merge line might look like. So yeah, who knows? That might be a subject for another show. And if any of us are feeling too good after Valentine's Day and want to be depressed, we can dig that one out. All right. Ed asks, when merging two databases, do the original two databases continue to exist after the merge? I ask in case we change our minds on the merge and decide to continue with the original databases. So okay, so you can't directly merge one database into another. I mean, they're freestanding bodies. There's not a command that says squish this one into the other one exactly. What you can do is you can export the data out of one as a text file and import it into an existing database where it will add to all the quantities and of any existing issues of in the same grade, and it will create new entries for things that don't exist if they weren't there before. So that you can do. When you do that, I would suggest a couple of things. Number one, so first of all, the original question is, it's not going to delete any of your files. That part, don't worry about. But I would say whenever you're going to talk about merging data together, number one, make a copy of the data before you do the merge, just in case something is not exactly the way you'd planned on. You want to be able to go back, and once you've altered a database, it's hard to unalter it, so you got to have a copy ahead of time. So do make a copy of both databases, set them off to the side. One good way to make sure you never overwrite your safety copies of things like this, go ahead and zip them. Use either WinZip or 7-zip, or just the built-in compression tools that are in Windows these days, and make a compressed archive. Stick your old safety copies into there. That way, if you ever need to go back, you can just unwrap a spare copy out of your compressed archive, and you'll never be directly opening the original database. So as a result, you'll never directly affect it in any way. So do that. When you want to do the merge, basically the procedure is you go to the database you want to go from, merge out of. You would say file export. By the way, this is also assuming you have at least the Pro edition. You can't do this with the Express edition or the free edition. But if you have the Pro or better edition of ComicBase, file export, choose the fields that are interesting to you. Make sure you have, of course, at least the title, the item number, and the condition. I would also add the cost and probably the notes and anything that's unique about your particular copy. Export it out. Export that out to a text file. Do that for comics. Repeat for any other types of data you want to export. So if you have magazines, export your magazines. If you have newspapers, export your newspapers. If you don't. Anyway, that's going to put it into a text file. And from there, what you're going to do is you're just going to go to the database you want to merge into, open him up in ComicBase, and say File Import. And when you open up the text file you just made using export, it'll automatically match up the fields as long as you use the default settings and let it include the headers. And at that point, all you got to do is click the import button. It only takes a few seconds. And like I say, if you have any brand new issues that were completely foreign to that database, it'll add them in. If you have ones that are in different conditions, it'll add those as different lines. If you have ones that are exactly the same title, item, and condition, it will add one to the quantity, or add as many as you had in the data being exported. So we'll put that together. All right. So I hope that answered the question on that one, but thanks for asking the question. It's a good one. All right. Other things. And by the way, we have in the studio, who is dodging just out of camera view. Dodger, you want to come over and say hi? That is Dodger making. I believe that's his on-camera debut. All right. And I just about killed the camera. All right, so yes, everyone, if that doesn't deserve a like and subscribe, I don't. I can't, that's all I got, man. That's all you're getting. All right, let's see. I put my camera back. Okay, cool. Yes, so you can tell mom is out, getting prepped for Valentine's Day-ish type stuff. So Dodger's up here as my in studio guest. So, all right, guys. All right, on to other things. Other viewer questions that people had asked that I comment on. A number of people actually wrote in with the same one. It says, "Yeah, I'm going to a particular thing. I used to be able to see stuff, and now all I see is things I own. I don't see all the issues. All the things I see are items I own. How do I get out of that?" And the answer in both these questions, and I don't know why this happened to two people in the course of the same week, but if if you're in ComicBase, you're tooling around and you're used to seeing, all the different stuff. So here's Simpsons Treasure Trove, for instance. If for some reason you go up under here and you had set view items to show as only either owned items or owned items plus regular issues, and we go back there and we bounce around. Oops, sorry. Did I actually mention? Did I just show it to you, or did I actually? Items to show. Let's say own plus regular. So, all right. So if I set it to owned items and regular items, okay. So if I set to owned items, you'll notice that they all go away because I don't own any copies of Simpsons Winter Wingding, courtesy of a guy who just bought them off me on Atomic Avenue the other day. If I set to owned plus regular issues, what it's going to do is it's going to get rid of everything that's not that appears to be a variant, as long as there's at least one issue that isn't that is a regular issue. Let me go to another title that will show this concept a little bit better. Let's go to Spawn. You gotta love saying Spawn. All right, so let's view him the regular way, and let's say show all items. And here you'll see that there's number 1, there's a second printing, third printing, fourth printing, fifth printing. There's a 3D edition. There's a Spawn A, B, C, D, F, G, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And you'll also notice that I don't have any copies of any of these, all right? If I say view and I set items to show to owned items, then you just get to see which Spawn items I happen to have in stock. You know, also highlighted, which is another way you have of quickly seeing that you have them, in your collection. If I set it to items to show as owned items plus regular issues, here it shows all the ones that are regular issues. So it's showing the issue number 1, but it's not showing all those second printings. It's not showing all those variants and so forth. And then so it's trying to cut down the list of what's there, and kind of what this view is really meant for is to help you very quickly figure out where you have holes in your collection, so you don't need to worry about filling in every variant in the world, because most people don't collect every variant of every issue. They're really just trying to say, hey, what issues have I got and what issues don't I have? And so this cuts down on the clutter to make that possible. But if in a case like, for instance, 267, when there is no regular issue 267, in that case, it says, all right, well, there's no what we call a primary issue for that one. And so here, even though you're in the show only owned and regular issues, it is showing all the variants, because there's nothing for us to say which one was not the variant, because they're all variants. So when you get to 267, anyway, so this question came up in a number of formats for people. One was a guy saying, hey, I see all the spawns, but now as soon as I get to I don't see them when I get to a certain range. I only see the variants after 267. What happened all the ones before then? And what had happened here is I guess playing around, he just had set his view items to show to one of these other settings. In general, I'm going to say the setting I use myself is all items, pretty much exclusively. And one trick I use to get around pretty quickly in the list when I need to go to a particular place is if you use F3, just punch the F3 on your screen. That brings up the jump to command. If I want to bounce down to issue 267 really quickly, if you pop that down, then it will bring you to the first issue of 267. That so when these lists get a little long, that's how I personally navigate it. Use whatever makes sense to you, but don't forget that you did it. So if you suddenly see the issues appear to be disappearing on you, that is likely the case. But I want to believe we've answered that question 3 different times in the last 10 days or so. So apparently a lot of people playing with it. So anyway, just be aware that that's what that does. All right. Other things that people have asked us about. Uh, Brian Price says, "Oh, what a good boy." He was a pretty good boy. He just heard mom come home, so now he of course is run out of here because he's such a mama's dog. Anyway, I'm treat guy for him, but that's other than that, and walks. He's always at the feet of his mom. All right, so another question came up is how is there a way to speed up the searching? The question of this one is there was a guy who was either a very slow computer or a very slow typer. I'm not sure what, but he was when he was going in, like you saw, if I could say spawn stuff like that, you saw it only just took a second or so to pull up the list, and then once you get going, it goes fast as you want. On this guy's computer, he said it was taking like considerably more time, and he's wondering, well, is there something I could do to make that go faster? Um, there are a couple of things. So the autocomplete is it's working the way it should. Um, if it takes really any longer than this kind of time on your computer, if because you saw the kind of speed we got there, um, if it's taking a lot longer than that, you can do a couple of things that might help you. Obviously, faster computer is always a good idea, but the first thing I would do is assuming you have a computer's up to the specs required for running the program in the first place. Let me go and put myself on the screen here just so I can be talking to this. So assuming you've got a computer from the last 5-10 years or so, we say I believe the minimum specs say 2 gigahertz or faster Intel, or similar chip. Uh, and we strongly recommend an SSD. That's by far the biggest thing you can do to make your computer faster. If your computer is still using a conventional hard drive, particularly if it's a conventional laptop hard drive, uh, I'm just going to say, hey, on behalf of all your loved ones, it's time to get a new computer. Just they say it's okay, you should do it. Because the $50 that it costs these days to get a 1 terabyte SSD can make ComicBase and anything else that uses your disk a lot like 20 times faster. It's crazy. These things used to be absolutely prohibitively expensive. I mean, it used to be a terabyte SSD that didn't even used to be a thing 10 years ago. But when they did get to be a thing, they used to cost $500. They're $50 now. There's absolutely no reason to buy a computer these days whose primary hard drive isn't an SSD, which is to say a solid state disk drive, a computer that uses essentially a special kind of memory in place of the spinning mechanical hard drive in order to get around. So do get an SSD. If you have a very, very old SSD, maybe upgrade to a more modern one. But the difference between no SSD and SSD is it's by far the biggest thing you can do to speed up your computer. Second thing, obviously, make sure you've got enough memory. 8 gigabytes should be just fine, unless you're doing really crazy things. But if you have less than 8 gigabytes, consider upgrading. It could be that you're what's called thrashing your computer's memory. If Windows is using a lot of memory for things, and if you've got a couple other programs open, they could all be competing for the same amount of memory, and so they're swapping bits of memory for up and down to the hard drive all the time in order to get going. That can certainly be a case. And then lastly, and this really is typically the last thing that matters in terms of the speed of at least ComicBase, is get a faster processor. There are certain they're almost Chromebooks, but some very low power, very, very cheap laptops that use they used to be called Atom processors. But very, very specially handicapped, very power. They're very, very cheap. They're very, very low power, which is why they got used. But if you're using that kind of thing and you find that just ComicBase is just struggling, you type things and just it takes a long time for stuff to happen. That is really a time when you really want to be thinking about getting a faster processor or another computer. But if you're using, any kind of mainstream, computer from the really, I'm going to say like the last 5 years, you should be just fine. But if you spent $400 to buy your computer 10 years ago, yeah, it's time to upgrade. It's if even without ComicBase, Windows alone is eating too much of your processor speed in order to get going. And then as soon as you start laying on things like antivirus software and Norton and all that stuff, then suddenly the performance of your computer is just going to go off a cliff. So that's the first thing. Beyond that, however, there's two software-ish things you can do that may help you a lot in terms of making your computer faster. Number one, if you notice that your computer's struggling with things, just try it as an experiment, uninstalling. And I do mean uninstall, not turn off, not disable, uninstall your antivirus or your security suite stuff, whether it's McAfee, Norton, etc. Just tell yourself, look, it's an experiment, but if you uninstall it and you restart your machine and your computer just gets a lot faster, consider using some other kind of antivirus. I tell people this, and it sounds, I fully admit, this sounds like hinky advice. It sounds like we're trying to pull a fast one on you, or we're trying to, I don't know, expose you to hackers or something. But it's amazing how sluggish computers can get when the full suite of something like a Norton or a McAfee is, or Bitdefender. I mean, there's a million of them, but they're very, very, very resource intensive, and they will try to intercept all the calls up and down to your disk. They'll try to, when things are loaded in out of memory, they'll try to get in the way and kind of inspect it as it goes. And to some extent, that can be okay. On a real practical level, I've seen Alienware gaming laptops brought to their knees. I mean, acting like they were Windows 98 machines, by these security suites. It's amazing the load that those will put on them. We don't officially recommend security suites. It's not our business. The one thing I will tell you is what we use in the office here is the stuff that's built into Windows, which also it passes two great tests for us. Number one is it regularly wins all the virus shootouts when they have something like PC World, we used 18 different security suites, and we found, tried them on infected computers and which one found all the viruses. Windows Defender, the ones built into Windows, regularly wins these. And just as importantly as all that is, it's not as bad in terms of its load as having a virus, which I can't say the same for about a lot of these other suites. So like I say, just as an experiment, if nothing else, uninstall. And the reason I say uninstall, don't disable, is because if you click there and say, oh yeah, I'll turn off the active scanning, turn off the this and that, you can go into Task Manager and you will see that most of them don't actually turn off. They're still there, they're still working, and they're still impacting your computer just as much as before. So I'm assuming you've got the ability to install it again if you're not happy with it, but try uninstalling your stuff and see if things don't get much faster. And then finally, and this is one thing that does have to do with ComicBase, if you're getting in a situation where things are going very slowly for you, try with the program exited, launch the program and press and hold down the control key as it launches, and keep that held down. Keep the control key held down until you see a prompt in ComicBase saying, would you like to try rebuilding your indexes? There is a possibility that you have a damaged index in your program, which is indexes are, think of them as like they do for the same thing for databases that indexes in a book do for you when you're trying to look up a word. They give a very short couple places to go for your computer to go. Says like, oh, okay, if I want to find, say, where Superman is in the database, I don't need to read every page of the book in order to find where Superman is. I can just go to the index and right there, look under super, and it'll tell me all the places it is. Databases use that everywhere. There are lots and lots of indexes in the program, and there is a slight, it's not inconceivable chance that something went wrong with one or more of your indexes. If you press and hold down the control key while launching ComicBase, you'll be prompted whether you want to recreate all your indexes, in which case it's not destructive to anything. You're not going to lose any data, but what it will do is it will just basically programmatically rebuild those indexes Takes a few minutes, and if things then get much faster, then yeah, then go for it. Department comments with Agent DeCamp says Malwarebytes hates ComicBase. Well, we love them too. Um, it's funny. Malwarebytes, back when we were based on a completely different database engine. We used to use the Jet database engine that Microsoft had cooked up before switching. They Malwarebytes has, I believe they use machine learning for, they do have people on staff, but I believe the way they detect what they think are viruses is they use algorithms built into what they call machine learning. I mean, you could say it's AI, but honestly, it's not wonderful how they do it. It is so bad actually that at one point, because we had a title in the database called Virus, which is to say the Dark Horse horror movie, where the people come upon an old abandoned sea freighter. I believe this was a Jamie Lee Curtis movie, and there was some kind of machine virus that animated all the machines and turned them into killing robots. But because we had an entry in the database called Virus, Malwarebytes was triggering on us and saying, "Nope, these guys are infected." Yeah, I can't even. But anyway, they regularly flag all sorts of weird things that we're doing just fine. That is, yeah, that went nuts. Yes. Oh, Agent Ken says I had to delete Malwarebytes. It kept deleting ComicBase. Yeah. If your software of choice is deleting your database of choice, something should go. And I'm going to say it probably isn't your database. Yeah, it's not. There are problems with using too much machine learning in life. I think they do it because they're trying to find behaviors that just look odd to them in some way. But I don't know what algorithms they've got, but they ain't great. And every once in a while, like I say, we'll go years without getting informed this one, and then someone will be like, "Yeah, they push an update to Malwarebytes, and now they're saying you're a infected program again or something," and it's because we do things like pushing database updates. I don't know what exactly we're doing. It's getting them nuts, but they're nuts. It's not us anyway. But yeah, just from a performance standpoint, though, watch out for all of the big suite things on there. Whether it's Norton, whether it's McAfee, what else. There's a lot of good that these programs can do for you, but be aware it comes at a lot of cost in terms of your machine's performance. And if you're starting out with kind of a mediocre machine to start with, it might be so bad in terms of performance that it's just not worth it. Like I say, consider whether, I mean, if running the software is as bad as having a virus, you haven't helped your life any. But there are very good alternatives out there that don't do that. Just find one of them. All right. Let me see here. And okay, yeah. So I'm gonna. Okay, that's all I want to say about viewer questions on that part for now. I'm gonna. Yeah, we're going threatening to go long after all, but I'm gonna try not to. I'm gonna say the rest of this as fast as I can, so we can all get on with, so we can get on with things. I guess don't use a medicine. That's not what I'm saying. I feel like, um, folder. Exclusion folder. Oh, interesting. Huh, okay, don't know. Yeah, no, it's just, don't use a medicine that's worse than the poison, than what it's curing, I guess, is what it comes down to. Anyway, so we do have a new version of ComicBase, by the way. If you've been watching the beta channels of what we're doing, there's a version 1137, which I believe it was Agent DeCamp who reported this one. He was entering a Turkish comic book, and it turns out we'd updated our currency tables. And we knew that, because there's standards bodies that maintain like what the official abbreviations of all the countries are and what their ISO codes and stuff like that. Apparently, somewhere along the line, we had updated Turkey's, and they had noted that the official, just like the official currency of the United States is USD for US dollar. It's always two letters, which is the same as your country code, followed by a single letter thing, which is your currency. The great England's currency is GBP for the Great Britain pound. Anyway, every once in a while, Turkey, countries will do things that force them to change their currency codes. And I guess Turkey had done this, and no one in the years since we updated our table, had tried to enter a Turkish comic. So, anyway, welcome to the party, guys. I don't know how to say hello Turkey to in Turkish, but anyway, welcome. We're happy to have you, and I'm happy that ComicBase 2020 actually supports the kind of code pages that we need to do to show the letters that you use for all your titles and creator names and things like that. So we're happy to have done that. But one thing we did not know is that the Turkish lira, which is, so it used to be the TRL, which used to be the currency of Turkey, was changed because, and I did not know this because I'm an American and we can be a little insular from time to time. The Turkish lira, after it used to be that the Zimbabwean dollar, I think it was the most valueless currency on the planet. At the height of its, it went through many rounds of hyperinflation, and I believe there were trillion-dollar bills printed, whose I think U.S. value was something like $20. But you could actually have a piece of currency that was $1 trillion, but the Zimbabwean dollars. And anyway, the way that countries that get in this kind of position usually react is by either saying, yeah, enough with us doing the currency. We are now just going to say that our currency is, say, the euro, or we'll use the US dollars, or so forth. A lot of countries in Africa have this situation where they don't have their own home-based currency because whatever they were using beforehand became so valueless, no one would take it. So they do all their money, all the transacting in someone else's currency. What Turkey had gotten into with the original lira is they got into one of these hyperinflation situations where they had to create a new currency, which is now called the TRY, which I guess the new word for new in Turkish is yani. So the new lira, which was apparently happened in 2005, and we didn't know about it until the other day. Here in insular ComicBase land, I'm afraid. It's like, by the way, we have customers in Turkey. Why didn't you tell us? Anyway, but anyway, I guess what they did is they shaved 6 zeros off their currency in order to create the new Turkish lira, or the Turkish yani lira. So that's what is being used today. So if you make a new Turkish comic book series, it's going to default to not the TRL is the currency, but the TRY. Unfortunately, we hadn't somehow synced up our table on that one. So up until build 1137 of ComicBase, there was no entry for Turkish yani in our currencies table. And so, well, bad things happened. Anyway, the good news is if you download ComicBase 1137 now from the betas, and you have an urge to, be adding any Turkish comic books, they can now be added because the currency will magically appear. So that's about it. That's all you got to do on that one. The other thing that happened in Build 1137, and this does get into like the topic I did want to talk about today, is we changed the definition of regular plus owned on reports. So let me show you what I'm talking about on that one. So if you go to this is going to be murder. I'm afraid I can't magnify in very well on this one, but if I go to, say, a collection overview, there's an option down here at the bottom. So this is a report for showing, just for all the titles of my collection, which ones have I got, which ones am I missing. And just like we talked about before with variants clutter the issue up quite a bit. And so we had this report, which is just like a have I got it, don't got it. And back when things weren't all variants, this was a great little report because in like 3 lines it would tell you where all the gaps in your collection were. These days, again, in a world where 87% of all the new comic books are variants of one sort, this report had become increasingly less useful for at least that. But what we had done to try to make it a bit more useful is we had this option down here for only show owned plus regular issues. So if I were to go to Spawn, for instance, and let's go ahead and do that right now. Okay, so let's go here for the current series. And if I say, show me missing items. All right, here, let me show it to you both ways. So if I say, show me for Spawn, the issues I don't have. And let's go ahead and preview that on the screen. And let me bring it over to the monitor that is being projected so you guys can see it too. All right, so then we get something that looks like this. Now, this is not great. At this point, I'm missing most of my Spawn collection, but you'll see things like, all right, I'm missing issues 1 through 2, 1 through 3, 1 through, the second, third, fourth printing. I don't have the 3D edition, etc. Yeah, all the way through, the fan specials and stuff down here. All right. Now, if I were to go and do that same report and say, show me the issues I got here, but I don't care. Just show me the regular issues I've got, plus the ones I own, obviously. And ironically, here I'm printing only on the missing ones, but so that's a bit confusing in the context of this report. But what that's meant to do is it's meant to say, don't show me every dang variant and every dang special edition. Don't, so and so forth. And so let's see what that looks like if I turn that filter on. And it's a bit better if it comes up here in a second. Oh, no, darn. Sorry, I just reported my whole collection. Let me report just Spawn. Yeah, current series. That's what I meant. Okay. Alrighty, and okay. And so that one looks like this. This is quite a bit less clutter. And you'll see at the beginning here, it does exactly what I want. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These are the ones I'm missing. And everything's going great until we hit the parts where there suddenly stopped being a regular issue to have for Spawn, right around 262, 60, 267, so up around here. But it did cut out a lot of the clutter on that report. Anyway, so there was a guy I was talking to earlier this week who try out the program for the first time, and he wasn't a happy guy, because he had some very particular needs, and he's not crazy at all. But one thing he took a lot of issue with on things was that he said, well, look, I'm trying to find the holes in my collection, and it's not easy now because there's too much junk in the way. And so, we talked about the different tools we have for kind of filtering down the junk like that. And we did actually, just in the last build or so, we expanded the algorithm we used for what gets excluded when you say only show me the owned plus regular issues, where it used to be we would show things like special editions and books and and annuals and stuff like that, and we actually took that out. So if you click the only shown regular issues, it's really only going to show really regular comic books. So if you're looking to fill holes, we hope that's more useful for you like this. If it's not, and you strongly disagree with that direction change, write us and let us know. Because we had, basically took a kind of a conference around here. We kind of revisited, the whole thing. We knew we wanted to exclude multiple printings. We knew we wanted to exclude variants, but we kind of split the vote a bit regarding special editions. There were some fan specials. There were winter specials. There's books, deluxe sets, collector sets, etc. And the thought is, for the purpose of that report, if what you're trying to find is holes in your collection, you probably don't want those either when you're checking that. So tell us if we did right on that one. I'm not 100% on that one, but we did change that in build 1137. So if you want to try that out and tell us what you think. One thing, though, that I do think this guy is completely justified in, he's not crazy in wanting what he wants on this one. I suspect what a lot of us do is a quick way to say, look, have I got it or don't I have it for titles, even when there are no regular issues. And this is one that I think I mentioned on one of the ComicBase After Darks when I was feeling a bit, as they would have said in England, when I was feeling a bit gloomy about the state of the industry, with everything becoming a variant of one sort or another. One thing that really, I'm not sure if we've adequately addressed in ComicBase is what to do when there are no regular issues. So, we know what to do when you have, issue 129, 120, 128, 129, 130, and then for, when you get, or 149, and we get to 150, you want to do 20 different covers. So, if as long as there's a 150 as well as a 150 A, B, C, D, E, F, G, that's, okay, 150 without a variant on the end, that's the regular issue. We know what to do with it. But what do you do when there is no 150 without a variant, on it? It's only variants A through Z on that whole thing. And in those cases, what we've generally elected to do, because they used to be quite rare, is we say, okay, in those cases, hey, we can't tell, and so we necessarily will have to show you all of them. Um, and I wonder if we should revisit that decision. Um, in particular, I'm wondering if is it the case that when you're saying, "Hey, just show me," certainly on reports, if you're saying, "Just show me reports of the issues I don't have," and things like that, does it make sense in those cases, maybe with the option of a special thing, or maybe it's a special report entirely, to say, "Ignore variance altogether," which is to say, yeah, I don't care that there were 16 issues of every single, I've got a 10-issue series, and they made 50 variants of each one of those, right? I think I've just described every issue of Vampirella, right? Um, so I just need to know, do I have any copy of the third issue? Do I have any copy of the fourth issue? Regardless of the fact that there never was a 3 and not a 3A, 3G, 3X. I just want to know, yeah, I'm missing number 3 by some designation. Um, in those cases, does it make sense to be that extreme and to say, look, yeah, you have issues 1, 2, 4, 7, 8. You're missing, 3, 3, 5, whatever the other numbers are. Um, and just let the reader figure out that, yeah, when I say you're missing issue number 3, what I really mean is any issue of number 3, even though there never was a primary one. Um, whereas what we would do today is we would say, okay, yeah, you're missing 3A, 3B, 3C, 3D, etc., which I think it's such an engineering answer, because it's correct while not being helpful. And so, yeah, I honestly, please weigh in uh, the thing, and let us know whether that's something we should look to do. Uh, can you add just missing regular issues? Yeah, I mean, so what Robbie's asking there is, yeah, I mean, that's what it does when you're doing that report. The problem comes is what happens when there is no official version of an issue. So, I mean, when there never was just an issue 3. What we do right now is we show 3A, 3B, 3C, etc., and that does clutter up the report. Um, whereas, I mean, here what we're doing actually is we're abstracting out the idea of, even though there never was an issue called 3, we're saying, well, yeah, you're missing 3, whatever that means in this context. Um, and Oro has this is kind of like the opposite case. For some of the Dell books, the 12 and 15 variants are of interest. Been trying to fill some of those in. Yeah, no, certainly I think you ought to have the ability to turn off the feature. But I mean, I do think there's a lot of us who are trying to fill in our holes for collections, and say things like, hey, look, I know I'm just trying to read the damn story, right? And I know I haven't read part 3 of Vampirella and the Pool of Blood, or whatever the heck the series is. But if you're trying to do that by looking down a list of every issue and every variant that they've got right now, it's actually, they've made that a real chore, because you have to use your brain to figure out that, yeah, okay, I have 1C, I have 2J, I have 4A, 4C, and 4, variant 27. I guess I don't have any version of issue number 3. Whereas I think if there was a report, if it did exist somewhere, where you could say, yeah, okay, I got 1, 2, and 4, and I don't and I don't have 3, and then let me suss out where 3 is. Yeah, that's it. Steve Dazzler just said, and is you almost need something like 3-star, where star means multiple issues. Yeah, we thought about that, and what do you think of that idea as well? That is definitely something we would consider. Where it's like the star means it's some kind of 3, it's some kind of 4. I wonder. I mean, on one part, it's hard getting away from who you are, and what I am in a lot of ways, I'm an engineer, where on one hand, it's like the 3-star appeals to me because it indicates there's more to the story, and you should key in on that. And I'm almost wondering if the star on a report is too high a price to pay, because what you're really looking for is the artificial clarity that you would get if you did say something like, "Show me, yeah, I've got 1, 2, I've got 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm missing 3," or I'm missing 3 and 9 and 10. If I said I'm missing 3 star, 9 star, 10 star, is that too cluttered? Is it too weird looking? I don't know. It's a good question. Um, and Brian Price says, exactly the report I want. Ignore the variant, ignore, just give the variation numbers. Audrey says, never had a problem with the original report and students report. So I guess we have all sides represented here. I think what we're probably going to have to do is just try some stuff and see what people's feedback is on this one. We can give options for some of these design decisions. I mean, I'm one thing I am definitely cognizant of is every time we add an option, it comes with load. It comes both for tech support and also on y'all, where it's just another thing to not be able to memorize entirely right in the program. When this guy was asking me about it, I had to look up the code to be able to explain accurately what that option meant because it had been implemented like a year and a half ago and I'd forgotten. Well, does it include special types like annuals or doesn't it? And the answer is, I don't know. I will have to look. So, I mean, if the guy who wrote the code doesn't know off the top of his head, how can you expect a guy who's just using the program to intuit it? So, I mean, every time we give options like this, it does add to how heavy the program is just to lift into your brain. And so some of these things you got to take the decision to say, look, we're going to decide how it works as opposed to giving you all the options, because it's hard to give all the options without also making it just unusable because you have all the options. I mean, there's definitely an alternate school of thought on software design, which tends to be loved by Linux, programmers, which says, no, power users want all the options. Give them all the options. But for anything that's going to be in the consumer space, you need to make sure that the thing does not, at the very least, if you're going to be the kind of company that picks up the phone when someone calls for help, you have to factor the tech support load in to any design decision, but also just as much is just how hard is the program to pick up. So we're really looking for something that's like a clear win one way or another. So we have to look at that. Yeah, and Oro says ComicBase TV star or or funny emojicon star. Star is still a wild card in searches. Wow, great question. And Ed also says, still we should change the font size for reports we may need to print. It's funny that is on the feature consideration list for the new version. Anything that involved fonts in the program definitely came up. That one is really controlled through Windows display sizing. In the very, like, if you change your display sizes and fonts, it's gonna get bigger, and we can't do a damn thing to stop it, on our end. And so that's really where you want to be controlling the the sizes in the program itself. But for what we image to a page or a label, we do have some ability, if we put some muscle into it, to allow you to have a bit more control over some of that. The gating factor on that is that we have to fit it to a certain size page or label or thing like that. And so it's hard to give you the control you need in order to rock the font size up and down or even change the font without also giving you the ability to cause clipping problems all over the report. So if you have very specific examples of a place where, dang it, I need this to be bigger or I need this to be smaller or something else like that, please send them to me, because I don't think we can give it to you in a generalized way, but we can probably give you something that gives you some customization of that if there's an appetite for it. It is one of these big work kind of situations, but I definitely see how it could be useful for folks, especially as we all get older and our eyes get worse. But if there's ones where your eyes are just bleeding trying to read the darn thing, yeah, let us know. We'll definitely have a look at that one. TV, all the comic stores call the A version the main cover, regular cover for their customers. Yeah, this is something that we had to adjust to in the last year or so, especially when Lunar became one of the major distributors. Is Lunar doesn't even have a style of that something's the main cover. They just only go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Whereas if you went back 5 years, you almost never saw a comic book that didn't have a main cover. Like the definitively so. But yeah, I do think I do think that's one of those things where we have to look into it. Let me see here. So other questions about issue about all info not fitting on a label. Age of Camp, if you can give me the example you were looking for on that one again, I want to relook at that one because I seem to remember looking into it and not immediately getting the result you were getting, but let me double check that one. If you could send me an exact label that is clipping on you, because I need to know the title, I need to know the label you're printing on, and so forth, and I'll see if I can't get that fixed for you if that's still a problem. All right, let me see here. Okay, so we have our top of the hour announcements, and then let's get the heck out of here and enjoy our Valentine's Day. Number one. Of course, we have dedicated thread on the ComicBase message boards where you can request topics and demos for the live stream, just like you're doing right now. And also the torrent link for Andre's world famous ComicBase cover catalog is on the ComicBase message boards. Please look for that one. And where are those ComicBase message boards? Go to forums.comicbase.com. All right, well, guys, someone had the foolish idea to, in addition to our normal celebration of Ash Wednesday today, they have some kind of commercialized holiday where I understand that unless you're nice to your sweetie today, they will never talk to you again. So let's all get the heck out of here today, and be with our aforementioned sweeties if we've got them. If not, let's go out and enjoy fun. And the captain in me, of course, says obviously you'll want to have gone to church as well. So anyway, guys, have a good one. I think it's also the celebration of the I believe this also was it Browning's the inventor of the 1911 the Colt 1911. I believe it's also his birthday. If you want to celebrate something completely different, but anyway, guys, let's get the heck out of here. Thank you all for joining us. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons on the way out, and let's all have a great Valentine's Day. You guys take care. Bye bye.